Alright, we're going to put together this Walthers cornerstone kit. It's a modern concrete short span bridge kit from Walthers. And we're going to put it together here in just a second for the new train layout. But before we get into that, hi friends, my name's Steven and this is my channel Signal Up Productions, where I make videos all about trains. This kit is going to be pretty easy to put together. There's not that many parts to go into it. We're going to take a close look at that, and then I'm going to talk about some of the different tips and techniques that I use in building these cornerstone kits. So that way, if you guys are considering building one yourself for your layout, you'll have some idea of what goes into this particular kit and cornerstone kits in general. Let's take a close look at my construction process. But before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Then click that bell icon so you're notified every time I post a new video. It really helps out the channel, the algorithm, and the analytics that I use in determining what kind of content to make for you guys. At the end of the video, if you have any questions specifically about this kit or any kit building, leave those in the comment section down below and I'll do my best to help you out. Let's get to gluing. Alright, so one of the first things I do whenever I'm building a kit like this is I read over the instructions thoroughly before ever cutting apart any of the parts from the sprue. So I have an idea of kind of what's going into it. Then I'm going to look through the parts and I'm going to find the part number that's labeled, usually molded into the sprue. See, there's all these little part numbers molded in the sprues. Sometimes the part numbers are molded onto the parts themselves, but generally with the cornerstone kits they're on a little plastic tab that's molded into the sprue. So I'm going to verify that each of the parts that it discusses in the instructions is actually in the kit, because there have been times in the past where maybe a particular part has been completely omitted, or the instructions have been are from an older design of that particular kit, but the new kit is assembled in a slightly different way. So just read through the instructions, check the part numbers against what you physically have in the package.
I'm going to use some leftover Christmas wrapping paper to help keep the small parts organized. After reading through the instruction sheet, I'm going to identify all of the parts, then start cutting them away from the sprue. The part numbers are molded into the sprue, so once I cut the part away, I won't know which part is which. That means I should tape the parts to the wrapping paper and then write the part number next to them on the paper. To cut away the delicate parts, I'm going to use this Tamiya photo-etched razor saw. It pops out of the little fret and then folds it together and slips it into a hobby knife handle. For larger parts, I use some sprue nippers or some flush cutters.
Alright, so I wanted to go in a little more detail of how I'm going to get these handrails off the sprue. I did watch another guy's video on YouTube building this particular bridge, and he noted that as fragile as these parts were, he had trouble cutting them away from the sprue, and he actually broke one of the handrail parts from the sprue whenever he attempted to get it off there. So I did go ahead and remove a couple here from the sprue. I'd like to show you now how I did that, my particular process of being able to get those off the sprue without a whole lot of damage. So I'm using my Tamiya fine tooth craft saw. It's a photo etched saw, so it's extremely thin, it's stainless steel. I'm really happy with how this is working out. So I got that in my hobby knife handle. And I'm going to use the saw to cut away from the sprues on the bottom part of the rail. Let me show you on this one here. So where the bottom part of the handrail attaches to the sprue, we're going to cut that part away with the razor saw. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And it's just very fine, gentle strokes. You just have to be patient and go slow. Okay? And so once I get the saw all the way through that, I'm going to do that with all the other parts where it's connected to the sprue at the bottom there. Once I get that disconnected, then I'll be able to come back with the sprue cutters, the flush cutters there, and cut away the larger pieces of the sprue, and then come back after that and then use the sprue nippers to get away the smaller pieces from the actual handrails without any damage. Alright, so with the handrails, the bottom part of the handrails completely cut away from the sprue. The only thing that is keeping the handrails attached right now are the parts on the side here. So that means if I were to cut right here and right here, it's not going to put any twist or any torque on that because it's already disconnected. So I should be able to cut those away without damaging the handrail. There's one part. And there's two parts, okay? So that exposes the rest of that. And I can do that to the other side as well. There's one, there's two. Okay. Now, if I come in and cut down here at the bottom, puts a little bit of stress on them, but not enough that I don't think it's going to damage it. See that? So now the only thing holding it is up here, which means I can cut that away from the sprue, like that. And we're just going to nibble away at this. When we nibble away slowly but surely, we'll take off just a small amount of the sprue material until all that we're left with is just the handrail. Alright, so once I get down to where there's just that much sprue left attached to the handrail, this is attached in 3 different places. Hopefully you guys can see this. I think you can see that probably. Each of the horizontal members do attach to... Yeah, that's going to help you see it. Okay, try that. There it is. The 2 of the horizontal members are attached to the sprue, and one of those vertical members there. And the vertical member is attached on a thicker piece of plastic than the other 2. So I'm going to nip the 2 smaller horizontal ones first with the nippers, and then I should be able to bite a little more aggressively with the sprue nippers to get that larger chunk out, and then all I have to do is just clean up the handrails after that. And there we have it. We've got one completely cut away without any broken members or pieces. So we'll clean that up a little bit with a file later once we get all of the parts cut off the sprue and arranged on our layout on our paper here.
Once everything is cut free, I sand and file all of the parts, then I'll test fit them together. Now I'm ready to get some glue out. I like to use this general purpose plastic cement from Plastruct. It's got a brush built into the cap. What you do is you press the 2 parts together, then brush the cement along the seam. Hold it in position for a few moments so the plastic weld can melt the plastic together. Then I'm going to set the parts aside to cure completely. What I like to do is get all of the sub-assemblies glued together, such as the box beams, the piling caps, and the abutments. Then I dry fit the assembled box beams with the piling caps and note which order they're in, because of minor differences that happen whenever I assembled the box beams and the side curbs together. I had to rearrange the sections to find the best fit. Then I started gluing the sections together onto the piling caps. After that was done, I glued on the abutments. My table wasn't perfectly flat, so I ended up having to use the bottom part of my nippers to wedge one end of the bridge up into position. Once the glue had a chance to dry completely, I brought the bridge over to layout and checked for clearances. Then I turned my focus on the pilings. I knew from the dimensions posted on Walthers' website that the bridge was not quite going to be tall enough to span my river scene. I tried the included steel I-beams to see how much too short they would be. I decided there was no good way to make those work, so I decided I was going to need to make my own. I started by using my caliper to measure exactly how tall and wide the pilings would need to be. Then I measured the I-beams included in the kit and sketched out a simple drawing noting key dimensions. At this point, I jumped on the internet and went to a website called Tinkercad, which is a free online tool used for creating 3D drawings, and created my own pilings in 3D. Once I liked how they looked, I exported the STL file and got out my resin 3D printer, got it all set up, and started printing. The pilings took a few hours to print, but they came out great. I rinsed them in some isopropyl alcohol and then cured them in my cure station. Then I trimmed the supports off with my flush cutters and test fit the whole thing back on the layout. Resin printed parts such as these can be kind of brittle, so I used a fine-tooth hobby saw to cut away the islands to avoid damaging the pilings. Now it was on to painting. I paint the model using an airbrush and acrylic hobby paints. It's a good idea to mix up the paint before each use. I painted the bridge an aged concrete color, and then the pilings I painted a rail brown color. Then I used super glue to attach the pilings to the underside of the piling caps. Next, it was on to the railings. Remember, they're very, very fragile. I made a roll of masking tape and stuck it to the turntable in my paint booth. Then I stuck the railing pieces to that so they wouldn't blow away from the airbrush. I painted the railings a silver color. I glued them onto the sides of the bridges, noting the railings on the abutments use 2 different part numbers, and they go in a specific orientation. The final step was to weather the bridge. I used pan pastel weathering chalk, and I just kind of brushed that on, streaking it down underneath where the railings would be attached to the side to simulate maybe some accumulated rust or grime that would drip down from those points. Not only did I apply the pan pastel dry, but I would occasionally dip the brush into some rubbing alcohol and then into the chalk, and then that kind of allowed me to make a paste with the chalk, and then I could streak it down a little more defined than just the chalk itself, and I like how the effect turned out. Because I knew this model wouldn't be handled, I didn't feel the need to cover the chalk with any dull coat to seal it, so I just I left it painted and weathered without any kind of dull coat coating. However, you can do that if you choose. But that's it for this bridge kit. It's now in service, carrying trains over the Greene River on my new layout. All in all, it was a fun and easy kit to build. Just take your time, match each part to the instructions, then dry fit everything together before gluing, and you should have yourself a fine example of a modern concrete railroad bridge. Thanks for watching.